So we're still on page 94 in our workbook. So what happens if you see a negative as a part of your exponent? In our previous lesson, we have done that, where if we had a base, let's say 2, and it was to the power of negative 3, we talked about how we simply switch the position of the number. So if something is in the numerator, we take it down to the denominator, and that will make the negative exponent into a positive exponent. Okay, so same thing will happen to this base, and this is its exponent right here, whether it's written like this or it's written with a negative in front of the fraction, same meaning. So our first goal is to change that negative exponent into a positive exponent. So we will do the same thing. We will take that a to the denominator, and that will make the exponent, which is a fraction, into a positive exponent. Okay, we always put a 1 if you remember, because if there's no other number there, then something has to occupy the space of a numerator, so we put a 1 there. Now once it has turned into a positive exponent, we will use the same idea, but it's just that instead of being in the numerator, all of that work will be done here in the denominator. The base will become the radicand, the denominator will become the index, and the numerator will become the exponent part again, the power. So we do the switching around still the same way. The only thing we have to do is just make sure we first turn the negative into a positive exponent. Okay, so here are some examples on page 94. So class example number 1. So in the first one, no negative there, just a normal base with a rational exponent. So I will write that as 25 square root, 2 is invisible, and then I will cube it afterwards. So the square root of 25 is 5, and then I will cube it, giving me 125. Okay, same thing here. This time my index will be 3, so cube root it, and then take it to the power of 4. So cube root of 1,000 is 10. To the power of 4 means now I will have 4 zeros. Example number 1C actually has a negative in here, so we have to do that one minor change. We have to write it as 1 over 27 to the power of 2/3. This is so that we can convert this negative into a positive power right here. So now we will do the exact same thing as you've been doing, except when we're writing it, we will be writing everything as 1 over. 1 over 27 becomes a radicand, 3 is the index, and then to square it. So that will give me 1 over 3 squared, which will give me 1 over 9. Again, we're dealing with a negative 1 in part D. So it will become 1 over 16, 3 over 4. Sorry, that kind of looks like a 9, but that's a 4. Let's see, 4. And then we do the same thing. 16 becomes a radicand, 4th root, and then to the power of 3. So that becomes 2 to the power of 3, which will become 1/8. Now here, as we've spoken in our previous lessons, if the base is negative, we can't do anything to change that. The base will stay as it is. So we don't move this to make this positive. So the difference here is that our base is already negative. So it will stay negative, and we will simply just do the cube root, because it's a 3 here, and then square it in the end. Okay, so you can see that in our switching of the form, we can't really change that. So this becomes negative 2 and square. Now the square will make it into a positive, because that's what squaring a negative does. Okay? How is f different from e? In f, the base is not -8, it's just 8 because there's no bracket around it. So this negative will stay outside, and then you will do the 8 as a radicand, cube root it, and then square it. So the negative will stay outside. This is a 2 squared, and the negative stays outside, and that gives me a 4. So in the end, the answer is -4. So a big difference between these two questions. In the last question, we can't really apply this half to both of them. If you remember, we only can do it if these two bases were multiplied. So don't distribute this half. All we can do is try to solve the bracket inside, which gives me a 25. And now I can use my rules to switch this over. So this will give me square root of 25, which is the 2 goes here and everything to the power of 1. Don't need to write it. And that gives me the answer of 5. Okay.